Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. We're going to learn the mimer of the 15th of Av. This year, it is also like it was 40 years ago, this coming Monday. And there was a Farbrengen that year that ever said a mimer ke'ein sicha. Actually, a little long, and I believe, so therefore we'll probably do this one in two parts. And a lot of complex ideas here. And it should give us the power and the strength, the energy that the Rebbe's Mamorim give us. Siyata D'Shmaya, Lil Beis, that would be like Sunday night, going into Monday. Parshas Eikev, Tes Vov Be'ov, Hey Tov Shin Daled Mem. Loi Hayu Yomim Tovim Li Yisrael Kachamisha Asar Be'ov V'chulu. So it says in the Mishnah in the end of Masechtas Tainis, in the end of the tractate of Tainis, that there were no festivals, no holidays, no great days for the Jewish people, for Israel, like the 15th day of etc. It finishes also like Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur has its own special aspect, bringing about a new slate to everybody. So that's very special, the holiest day of the year. But we're going to discuss here the 15th of Av. And we know that which the Rabbi learned from this and how they looked at its details and the specifics to be able to share with us the lessons that this may teach us. In the Mamorim that begin also with these very words, quoting the Mishnah, or those that explain this Mishnah, Mahu Ta'am Hadover, meaning they don't necessarily start with these words, but they explain it. Mahu Ta'am Hadover Shalahay Yom Tovim Yisrael Tu Be'ov. What is the reason that there's no other festival like the 15th of Av? V'hine B'pri Etz Chaim Mevur B'mailis Yom Zeh. So, in the Pri Etz Chaim, which is the teachings of the Arizal, written by his student Rabbi Chaim Vital, it explains the special advantage of this day. Shuhu Hayem Shabei Halvona Hi B'Shleimusa. It's the day that the moon is full. Chaim Asir B'Shleimusa. The moon is in its fullest, as the Zohar calls it. And since the people of Israel will also be full once again, just like the moon, it's small, but then it gets bigger and bigger until it's in its fullest. And like we say in the prayer when we make the Kiddush Levana, the sanctification of the new moon, we mention this. Therefore, the day that the moon is in its fullest is a great holiday. Nevertheless, we have to understand that which it says that there are no other festivals like this. So that would include, and maybe even primarily, the first and primary festival of the holidays, especially the three festivals, the Sholosh Regolim, Shu Chag Pesach. That would be Pesach, Passover, the Exodus. Shagam Hu Chal B'Yom Tezvav L'Chodesh. And Pesach is also always on the 15th day of the month of Nisan. Shabei Halvona B'Milua, the moon is full. While there is the Nichel Gam Chag HaOsif, that would also include the festival of the harvest, Chag HaSukkos, the festival of Sukkos. Shagam Hu Chal B'Tezvav L'Chodesh. It is also on the 15th day of the month, Tishrei, Shabei Halvona B'Milua, when there's a full moon. So Vim Kain, then what's the great advantage of the 15th of Av specifically? So here's the point of the explanation. The Mailish Shleimus Halavana Shabatuba of Himashum Shabo Achar Hayirida the Tishabov. The advantage of the full moon on the 15th of Av is because it follows the great dissension that happened on the 9th of Av. Dihini Yedua Shakol Aliyah Mitis Hiadei Hagdomas Hayirita Davka. We know that any true ascension really is preceded by a great by a descension specifically. Like for instance, the first time that we ascended, the first ascension. The ascension from Egypt to the land of Israel. When God is speaking to Jacob and he tells him, don't fear to go down to be reunited with your son Joseph in Egypt. And he says, I will go down there with you, and I will also, and here the verse says, God says, I will also bring you up, and he says it in a double terminology here. A'alcha gam oloi, I will bring you up, also to elevate you. And we also have another double term of elevation and ascension when the spies come back and there's the difference of opinion of the 10 and the 2, that the 2 that say it's good, they say, Oloi na levirashna, say, we will certainly go up. When there's a double term in the Holy Tongue, it is for emphasis. So we can certainly go up, Oloi na ale virashna, so we will be able to settle it. Aliyah kfula, double ascension. Shahoysa al yedei hagdamas yirida kefula davka. The double ascension is because it was preceded by a descension that was also doubled, specifically so. Kameshakosov yored yoradnu. And like the verse also says explicitly when the brothers are talking to Joseph and saying why they're there, they also say yored yoradnu, we came down, also with a double term of the descension. So then, commensurate with how great the descension is, that's how great the ascension, which will come because of it, will be. When the descension is quite great, then the ascension will be also very great. And this is the advantage of the 15th of Av over the 15th of Nisan and the 15th of Tishrei, because the ascension and the fulfillment that we have on the 15th of Av comes after the great descension of the 9th of Av, which is of course the saddest day on the Jewish calendar, the day that both temples were destroyed. But even originally in the desert, that's the day that the above mentioned spies came back and they complained and they cried that how it's going to be terrible, etc. That was the first calamity of the 9th of Av. So the Rebbe says, well, wait a minute. the Exodus, the ascension of the Exodus, which was on the 15th of Nisan, was also after a great descension. The one of the exile in Egypt, which was with hard labor. But it's still not the same as the descension of the 9th of Av for several reasons. Olive, the first one is, they were quotes the Gemara Rosh Hashanah. The Gemara Rosh Hashanah, Lifnei Chedesh Nisan, Bat Laveda Ma'avesena B'Mitzrayim. The Gemara says in Tractate Rosh Hashanah that already from Rosh Hashanah of the year of the Exodus, in the year 2448 after creation, it was the time when there was already the plagues, etc., and our forefathers already didn't have any further hard labor anymore. So they had a little break in Egypt. So that's number one. It was already a relief before they even went out. V'habeis, now, albeit a relief after hundreds of years of terrible, horrific circumstances and conditions. V'habeis, the Rebbe says the second reason, but this is the deeper reason, of course. The dissension into Egypt wasn't that great. It was before the Torah was given. In other words, it was before we gelled as a people, as a nation. It was like the preparatory stage. Therefore, it wasn't in a revealed sense that Israel are the children of the Holy One, blessed be He. The Rebbe doesn't say it here, but he says it many other places. He compares the exile in Egypt as the gestation period of pregnancy, and the redemption is the birth. That's why Passover, Pesach, is considered the birth of Klal Yisrael. So we're not yet the children, so to speak. Children who sit at the father's table. Therefore, the dissension isn't as great because we weren't yet the people that we became. But after the Torah was given, then in a revealed sense, Israel became the children of the Holy One, blessed be He, that sit at their father's table. Like we've said many times, that the giving of the Torah, God abolished the decree that the supernal realms and the holiness is not able to come down and permeate the physical world, and vice versa, that the physical world wouldn't be able to be elevated. And that ended at the Torah, at the giving of the Torah. And at that time, they became the kingdom of Kohanim, priests, Goy Kodesh, and holy people. And when God describes it, He says that I have carried you on the wings of eagles, and especially while the Holy Temple was extant, when it was standing, was revealed even more that Israel are the children that sit at their father's table. And even when they were exiled, they were like children who were banished and exiled from their father's table, as the Talmud describes it. So that's a great, great dissension. Having been at the king's table and being banished, and of course, so that's why the dissension of the ninth of Av is even greater than the dissension of Passover. Now that I was going to address Sukkot. The festival of Sukkot, the 15th of Tishrei, there's no dissension there. On the contrary, Sukkot comes subsequent to the great ascension of the days of awe, the high holidays which precede it, the special festivals, beginning with the head of the year, Rosh Hashanah, that on that festival Israel actually coronates the Holy One, blessed be He. Like God asks that you make me the king over you, you accept me, you accept my monarchy and our connection, and the fact that, like a Chassidus talks about this at length, and God willing, we will learn those discourses later. The reciprocity of a king and his people, the responsibility. And then there's the 10 days of penitence and return. The prophet tells us in Isaiah, seek out God when He's to be found. Call out to Him when He's close. And the Talmud says, what does that mean? When is that? When is He close? The 10 days that are between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. To the extent that the Talmud says that God is so close and a person is in such a lofty level at that time that an individual is able to accomplish and affect as an individual what it takes the congregation and the quorum to do throughout the year. So then when you're with the tzibur, with the minyan, with the quorum, during that time, then it's even more powerful. Therefore, the ascension of the 15th of Nisan and the 15th of Tishrei isn't as great as the 15th day of Av. The 15th of Av, which comes after the great ascension of the 9th of Av, is very great. Because it's commensurate to the great ascension that happened on the 9th of Av. And that's what the Talmud says. There's no festival for Israel like the 15th of Av. The Mailas Hayom Tu B'Av Al Kol Sha'ar HaMe'adim. So the advantage of the festival of the 15th of Av over all the other festivals, it's because it comes after the great ascension of the 9th of Av. That's explained at length in the discourses that talk about this. And here the Rebbe points out and addresses, he says, and including in the discourses the Rebbe himself said the previous year in 5743. This is the Maimer from 5744. So the Maimer that Rebbe said 41 years ago. The Rebbe also explained it a little bit differently, but more at length this part. V'hinei alpi mashen isbayer le'il shekol aliyah mitis idei akdomas hayiri dedavke. Now, according to that which we set forth earlier, that every true ascension is because it follows. In other words, it was preceded by a descension, specifically. Yisbar in Yosef will be able to explain another point. And here the Rebbe goes into something else. And in this part, the Rebbe is going to come to one of the quintessential philosophies of his whole leadership and his outlook on the Jewish people and the greatness of what we can do and our task, and the Rebbe gets into it here. So the Rebbe says we will look at something that we say in this every single day in the Holy Temple. The Levites said a special psalm, and we actually in the prayers, in the morning prayers in Shacharis, we say the Shir Shel Yom. That is to commemorate, and that says the same thing that was said then. So the song of the day, which is really a poetic song. The kvi is the way that the 15th of Av falls out on this year and the previous year. The Rebbe mentions the year before. Of course, 5743 and 5744 had the same festivals falling on the same day of the week. It's like this year too. It's on the second day of the week on Monday, second day before Shabbos. And what do we say in that song? God is great and extolled very much in the city of our God. Begs for some explanation. But not a lot of explanation, because we're talking about the greatness of God. But now the Rebbe is going to look at this in detail and quote the Rabbi. So, like it says in the Talmud, in the song of the day is brought in the tractate of Rosh Hashanah and in the end of Tamid. B'Sheni, what does the Talmud say? On Monday, on the second day, what did they say? Great is God, and very much extolled in the city of our God, his holy mountain. Rashi comments in his commentary on the Talmud in there in Rosh Hashanah, on that which the sages explain, he says that what's the connection between saying that statement and the second day of the week? So Rashi explains it's because on the second day of the week, meaning even the second day, on the second day of creation, God separated what he had already brought into creation. So the first day was light and dark. The second day, God separated the firmament and the heaven from the waters that were below to then the waters that are above. So he started to place things in their proper place. V'zeh al masha amar zal shakash dev shem shechiluk ma'aser chulu v'zeh l'shen hivdil v'zeh l'shen hivdil rekiya ben yilim tachtoinim, and this is the term that refers to this, that he separated the heaven and the firmament amongst their most supernal and higher and the lower. V'nisala, and he ascended himself. V'yoshav b'morim, and he was seated in the supernal realms. Dugmas shechene be'irei v'har kodshe, that he is like somebody who dwells in his city and in his holy mountain. So the first day creation was still just dark and light there, but then he started to make placements and to separate the different things, and God himself ascended on that day and sort of put into place the heavenly realm. This is the connection to in the city of our God on his holy mountain. Because on this day he ascended to that level of his city, so to speak, in his holy mountain. And according to this that we said, that every ascension is preceded by a descension. So then on Monday, it's when God went down for creation and then went back up to set up the heavenly realm. We'll understand this with some further explanation as we are going to explain here subsequently. So regarding the verse and the idea that God is great and much extolled in the city of our God, Amar Azal, the Talmud tells us, now it's pointed out that this is that Chassidus really quotes this from Kabbalistic sources, but this is something that we also say it's of our sages, quoted in Kabbalistic works, primarily in the Zohar. So our sages said, when is God great? When he is in the city of our God. Now, we know that God is always great, but the Rebbe is going to explain this detail here. V'yesh bozeh beis pirushim. And there are two explanations here. Pirush Aleph HaPoshet Yeser, one explanation, which is the simpler one. Kivur b'kam mamorim, like it's explained in several discourses. Ubefrat b'maimer chakad murmur shabns masedim. I'm sorry. Kivur b'kam gom shagilu gadlo savayahu be'ir l'keinu davke. So the first, let's go back here a little bit. So the first explanation is that, which is the simple explanation, like it's explained in several discourses. When is the greatness when is the revelation of the greatness of our God? When he's in the city of our God specifically, in the what's called Ir Elokeinu, the city of our God. That's when it's the revealed greatness. God is always great, but it's revealed at that point. Upidish Abbei is the more complex explanation. Like it's explained in several discourses, specifically and especially in the discourse of the Rebbe Rashab, the fifth Rebbe, B'dibra Maschil Kimigdal David, the Shabbos Nachmu Tov Resh Mem Daled, in the mimer that begins with the words like the Tower of David, which he said and he wrote in proximity to Shabbos Nachamu. This Shabbos is called Shabbos Nachamu, named for the Haftorah, which begins Nachmu Nachmu, to have consolation in a double measure after calamity of Tisha B'Av. But when did the Rebbe Rashab? The Rebbe is mentioning this here 40 years ago, which was Tov Shin Mem Daled, which he mentioned the mimer that the Rebbe Rashab said 100 years earlier. Lifnei Mei Shana, the Rebbe says, 100 years ago. I just want to point out that that was really just a year and a half after the passing of the Rebbe Marash, and the Rebbe Rashab at that point was a young Rebbe of 22 years old, and he didn't accept upon himself the official leadership till he was around 33, but nevertheless he taught Chassidus from even before his father passed away, and when he was almost 21, and he was already 21, he was almost 22, and the Rebbe is quoting that here now because it's the 100th anniversary, not because, but he mentions that it's the 100th anniversary of that mimer, because this concept is indeed discussed in other places of Chassidus too, but the Rebbe says, especially in this mimer, and the Rebbe is going to explain from that mimer. It's not just, and this is the deeper explanation. See, the first explanation is when he's in the city, so then it's a revealed sense of God, and that's when we can maybe feel the greatness more. The Rebbe says, it's not just the revelation of the greatness of God when he's in Ir Elokeinu, in the city of our God, Elo oidzois, much more so, shegam etzem hagadlos tahavaya nifal be'ir Elokeinu davka. The essence of the greatness of God is actually affected and accomplished and done and made when he's in Ir Elokeinu, in the city of our God specifically. Kemuvon mehamvur bezehar, like it explains, this is the Rebbe's primary philosophy of our mission on earth, that we make God happy by us doing the mitzvahs here, and more than that, the happiness is so great, like we're going to see here in the Maimer, that this actually increases oyer in the highest realms of within godliness himself. It's like God grows, so to speak. It's like when somebody is so proud, and so God is so happy, and God himself grows, so to speak, from what it is when his will is accomplished on this earth. So, we can move on mehamvur bezohar, like it's explained in the Zohar, the malka b'loy matrunisa loy have a malka. A king without a queen and a kingdom, so to speak, is not a king. V'loyhu godl, v'loyhu mohulul, and therefore he's not great and he's not extolled. He's incomplete, so to speak. God's dissension, the dissension of the king, which is here a reference to God, to the city of our God, which shehi bechinis matronisa, that's like the queen, meaning in the kingdom, the household, so to speak. That doesn't just affect the revelation that now he came here, so everyone can now see this revelation. Eliyaserim much more. The king within himself becomes a new king, so to speak, a new person. He's able to affect and shine in this arena of Ir Elokeinu. And therefore, it's something which is so new that it wasn't like it was before this. And therefore he becomes like he's great. Like the Rebbe Rashab explains in that Maimer of 140 years ago, or 56:44. Now, granted that the idea of the king and the queen and the kingdom is only a parable. The Torah speaks in terms and terminology that mankind understands. But nevertheless, the parable has to be similar to what is being described. And from this we can understand the kashem shebemoshel hamatronisa payel is godless b'melech, just like the queen in the kingdom are able to affect greatness within the king himself. Through the level of the city of our God, so then there's a greatness in the name of God, in these aspects of God. You see, God in his essence never changes, can't change. But in terms of how God created the world, then God has brought about that there are certain things that therefore give him this appreciation, etc. So now the Rebbe is going to talk about the first and simpler explanation, and then the second one. So let's talk first about the first one, which is simpler. That when is he great? When he is in the city of God. That's the revelation. Shem Havaya Mitzad Atzmei Hu L'mayla Mehavona V'Hasoga. The name of God on its own is really higher than our understanding and our grasp. L'mayla Minyan Hagilui, and higher than anything that can be revealed. The Harei Masha Havaya Hu Miloshin Mehave, the name of God, which is Yud Kei Vav Kei, spelled with the letters, we call it Shem Havaya, and it is from the term that means to make things exist, to affect them, that they should be existing. Hainu inyan hahisavus, things that they should be effectively. There's an outlet there. They should be affected by the idea of creation. Mahava, he makes things exist. Another terminology which the name of God is about is that God is, it says, was, is, and will be, all at once. This is something which is hidden from the creations. It's not something that the lav kol mecha. We can't understand all this, our brains. Even in intellectual thinking, we could know about it, but we can't really understand how this works. God creates ex nihilo, and He's existed the whole time, and He's higher than time and space, etc. And certainly we can't really properly understand and grasp and see this. But when he comes down into the city of our God, which is the lowest level of the realms, which is the level of Malchus, which is the lowest sphera, but it's made up of all the previous spheres, all of the other elements of kindness and severity, etc. And it's made up of all of them, but it's also considered the female sphera because it is the purveyor of these to the next level below it. And therefore when it's in the highest level, the lowest level of the highest level, it's like the landing of a staircase, is then the highest level of the next set of stairs. So it's like its feet go down into the next realm because it takes it from the world of Atzilus and goes into the next worlds. And this is the idea that reveals somewhat this whole idea, this whole aspect. When the name, the four-lettered name, Havaya, comes forth in the name Elohim, which means judges, and it's judgment, and the Rebbe will explain it here a little bit, and it's a reference here to Ir Elokeinu, the city of our God. It's talking about the name of Elokeinu. Sheyesh boi kuf chof tzirufim. The name Elohim, which is spelled Aleph Lamed Hey and then Yud Mem, so it's a 5-letter name. So any group of 5 letters can be rearranged in 120 120 combinations. So the same thing is with the name of God, that it rearranges each one as a level and a level and a level and a level as it descends level to level. Hainus shemispashit lamata b'yeser, continue descending, but it spreads when it descends. And through this, the revelation of God's name then goes to the subsequent lower worlds, out of the highest world of Atzilus, which is in relation to the other worlds. It's really so godly that it appears as God Himself. And then it descends and it goes down to the lowest world, to our world. We get godliness here. So creation comes through the name of Hashem, God's name. God makes things exist. He causes everything to exist. But then, if God just came in the same essence that He is, and not broken down in any way, not concentrated, and not guarded, so to speak, then no creation would be able to exist. It would just explode, similar to electricity, which needs to have transistors and capacitors to break it down so that every smaller appliance is able to get it, not have a surge of power that will blow it up. So, in order that the creation should not be totally nullified and cease to exist in the way they are, from the revelation of the name of God, therefore it has to have the name Elokim to hide it, so to speak. That is the shield and the sheath that covers over the name of God. And that facilitates and makes it possible for there to be creation through the name of God, because it's broken down and shielded by the name Elokim. Like the verse says in Tehillim, in Psalms, chapter 84, that, excuse me, the name Elokim is a shield to the name Havaya, ukaminartik Hashemesh, like the sheath of the sun, hamegin al Hashemesh, that protects the sun, shal yodi davke yechilim dore ha'oretz lekabel ser Hashemesh, that through it the those that live on earth, that dwell on earth, are able to get from the light of the sun. I don't know scientifically what this is, and I don't know if this is a direct reference to the ozone layer. I don't think so, but it's other shield. As a matter of fact, it says God once took it out in the shield, made it too hot, etc., etc. But it's not important what this would mean scientifically. This is what it's talking about. Shalachan Amar Azal. Therefore, the sages told us that in the future to come, specifically, the Holy One, blessed be He, will take out the sun from its sheath. Hulu. Because before that time, it's not possible to get and to accept the light of the sun except through the sheath. The same holds for the name Havaya and Elokim. The revelation of the name Havaya in a way that the creations are able to accept it and receive it. That's only through the sheath that covers it up, and that's the name Elokim. So what does that mean when God will take out the sun from its sheath? It's not possible for the way the situation is of the worlds and the way God created it and the way the chain of how the worlds work right now, it's not possible to do. If He would do it, the world wouldn't be able to exist. In the time to come in the future, then He will do it. This is what is meant when it says God is great and very much extolled in the city of our God. The revelation for us to be able to handle this comes through the name of Elikim. The greatness of the name Havaya is through the sheath of the name Elikim. And Kidavka Yideshem Elikim Yochalias Inin Hayisavos Deribah Nivroim. Through the name Elikim, we're able to have the creation and the formation, the existence and the bringing into existence of the multitude of creations. Shemihem Royim is godless Havaya, and from when you see the greatness of creation, that is the result of God holding back the name Havaya, which is of course kindness, and the severity which is added to it that is able to temper it. That's the name Elikim, that's the sheath, makes all these creations, and when you see the greatness of the creation, so you see how great God is. Like it says, how much is your handiwork, God, and how great your actions and your work is, God. Mishum shahamogin v'hanatik l'shem elikim mechasa hatekef l'shemesh havaya, because the shield and the sheath of the name Elikim covers over the strength and the part that is not able to be accepted of the sun, which is Havaya. That's what's called the city of our God. What is a city? So say the place of Elokeinu. When it says the city of Elokeinu, like we learned in the book of formation called the Sefer Yetzirah, the book of creation. It's very esoteric, Kabbalistic. It's the code of creation. She'inin his ha'izavo sha'ideh ha'is nimshel avinim batim. Shemehem na'aseh. The idea of putting together and the formation and the creation of the world through the holy letters, the 22 letters, that is compared to building houses which are made from, which is the makeup of a city, Shemehem Na'asis Ir, and how are houses made? Shtei avonim boine shnei batim. We say two stones build two houses, meaning a unit. Sholosh avonis boine shisha batim. This is the words from Sefer Yetzirah. 3 stones make 3 houses. Ad ein sof. So 3 stones make 6 houses until it's infinite. In other words, you can keep on adding and adding, and each one of the bricks, so to speak, and the blocks of creation. We'll do this next piece here, and then we'll get to this idea that the Rebbe says that it's through. We'll start this idea that the Rebbe says it's through our work here on this world. And I want to point out also that in the Mamorim of Tisha B'Av, the Rebbe speaks about this idea that the Rebbe spoke about it 10 years earlier than this also, the idea that the loss of the Beis HaMikdash actually brought about the survival of the Jewish people, and it brought out in them the great, more than survival instinct, but the great efforts to bring about godliness in this world. And the Rebbe speaks about it in a few of the Mamorim, including, and we learned the Maimer of Tzion B'Mishpati Poda, which touches upon that a little bit. But there are also Mamorim that the Rebbe begins with Eicha Yoshva Badot, and how Chassidus explains the idea of Tisha B'Av in its deeper meaning, because every calamity has something that brings about something that will come out afterwards in a greater sense. And we did learn a little bit about that in the about the soul coming down to this world in the Maimer of Shabbos Chazoin, which we learned last week, the idea of Tzion b'mishpat tipada, that Zion is redeemed with Torah, etc. So this will conclude part one. In part two, we will talk about this idea that through our doing mitzvahs, God's name, and therefore in all of his realms, up until God's essence, but God is, his essence is what's in everything. So God himself is grows, so to speak, from what we do. And that's the second thing that Rebbe Rashab said. So that will be in part two, which will start with Ubir Inyan Amiti, who Godel Shehu Be'ir Elkeinu Pirish HaBeis. I'm sorry, Ubir Inyan Amosai, who Godel Kishahu Be'ir Elkeinu Pirish HaBeis. That was a Freudian slip because it was thinking the essence of how it is. And Kabbalistically, we'd understand that words that have the same letters really are related. So, stay tuned, or tune in again.